Looks like YouTube is up too. All right, that is up too.
Sent the tweet.
Alrighty, welcome in everyone to another episode of the Batflip Podcast. Got Damien and David here. Matt is still sucking around the world somewhere. I think he'll actually come back tomorrow, but still, you are stuck with us again here as we recap the LCSs that we had and then preview the scripted World Series in quotation marks that everyone is talking about here. But before we get into all that, David, how are you doing this week?
Yeah, we'll talk about that. You and I have strong opinions against the masses on this one, and I at least I get to be the neutral party on that because honestly, I picked against the Yankees and Dodgers, but it was always like, well, I'm hoping to be a little different. I really enjoyed the ALCS. I think that was the closest 4-1 series I've ever watched. We'll talk about him, but there's a guy going to free agency this year that participated in that series. He's made himself some money. We've talked about that quite a lot for guys like coming down the stretch here and into the playoffs who can make money. Juan Soto made himself some money this weekend, and that was pretty cool. As for how I'm doing, like Clemson won on Saturday, feeling good about that. It was a bit of a crazy, chaotic college football week, so I'm looking forward to the college football season getting into playoff time with this 12-team playoff. It's going to get really exciting, I think. And rest of that, I mean, took some PTO this week. I'm getting ready to plan out a vacation. Kind of excited about that. But how you doing?
There we go. Got a new number one team in the nation in college football, so that's
right.
That's good.
That's right. The
Go
Ducks.
The
Ducks.
Yeah, that's fun. But this week was just the games were blowouts, but like it was just absolutely stressful from it. I'm glad that I got to like participate in watching the other side be the like nail biting back and forth games because that's fun. But yeah, this week we'll dive into the NLCS here in a little bit. But as the LA fan, you're just nervous. You never know. The playoffs are just the biggest unknown there. So it was a stressful week, but hey, we made it here. So
I saw a thing that said, like, I think it's a tweet that said, there's nothing quite like being the fan of a college or of an MLB team and then watching them in the playoffs because it's all stress. There's no enjoyment, and then your team's not in, and you're just watching baseball. It's very fun, but then you want nothing more than to be that stressful, falling apart, even if your team is winning the series. I think it's the best offensive championship series of all time. Like it's still stressful, and that's what makes it so crazy.
Yeah, it's just like I said. There's just so many unknowns that you get into these games and. Usually in a 7-game series, we talk about the best team wins, usually, right? But there's postseason momentum. I mean, they talk about it on the broadcast all the time. In the regular season, you need 2 to 3 hits to get a rally going. In the postseason, you get 1 walk, and the whole tide has shifted here. So that didn't seem to happen all that much in the NLCS because we'll have some crazy stats when we get to there. But I think the best place to start is the ALCS. When we talked to you, it was 1-0, or the first game of that was going on, I think, right? It was the Yankees were leading, I think, 4-0 at the time when we went to go sign off. They ended up winning that one 5-2. But the rest of the series is kind of where it got a little bit crazy. Game 2 was the I'm trying to pull it up how it goes. Cole versus Bybee. And
Guardians got a lead.
The Guardians got a lead. I was at the bottom of the first. Yes. No. Sorry, the Yankees got the lead first.
That's right.
In the bottom of the first, it was on the Aaron Judge pop-up that Brian Roquillo dropped.
That's
the shortstop Brian Roquillo dropped that and scored. I think it was Gleyber Torres from that point. Then it went to the bottom of the second, and then Verdugo doubled down the left field line to score Volpe. Then they had a sac fly from Aaron Judge that made it 3-0 Yankees. And then it went all the way until the top of the fifth. Josh Naylor got a sac fly off Garrett Cole, stored Stephen Kwan, and then Will Brennan grounded out to score Kyle Manzardo, make it 3-2 at that point. Bottom of the sixth, Anthony Rizzo doubled down the right field line to score Anthony Volpe. And then in the bottom of the seventh, Aaron Judge hit a homer off of Hunter Gaddis, a 2-run homer to make it 6-2 Yankees. And then top of the ninth in that one, Jose Ramirez homered off of Luke Weaver to make it a 6-3 game. So Yankees went up 2-0 there, took both games in New York, really took the commanding lead of the series. I think at that point we were kind of looking like, hey, maybe they might go into Cleveland because Bybee had already thrown. We talked about if the Guardians wanted to win, they were going to have to win the Bybee game. They didn't there. Go to game three, which might be the most electric game out of all of these.
For sure.
The Yankees ended up getting a run in the top of the second on a Jose Trevino single to right field. And then in the bottom of the third, Kyle Manzardo hit a homer off of Clark Schmidt to give him a 2-run lead, scoring Brian Roquillo and himself. Then that score held until the bottom of the sixth when Andres Jimenez singled to center field to score Lane Thomas, make that a 3-1 lead for the Guardians. And then Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton went back-to-back off Emmanuel Clase to tie the game at 3. Aaron Judge's homer tied it off of that scoring Juan Soto. Giancarlo Stanton was the go-ahead homer in the top of the eighth off of Emmanuel Clase at that point. Then we get to the top of the ninth. Gleyber Torres gets a sac fly, scores Anthony Volpe, gives them a 5-3 lead. Then we go to the bottom of the ninth here where Big Christmas, as Brian Anderson called him, John Kesky Noel, ended up getting a 2-run pinch hit homer off of Luke Weaver with 2 outs to tie the game, bottom of the ninth. Then we go to extra innings. Yankees do not score in the top of the 10th. Then in the bottom of the 10th, another pinch hitter in David Fry gets a 2-run walk-off homer off of Clay Holmes to win the game for the Guardians at the score of 7-5. The most back and forth, wild, chaotic game. Before we get to the other two, let's break down game 2 and 3 a little bit. We talked about game 2, kind of just got away from the Guardians. Yankees kind of handled them there. Heading from New York to Cleveland, what was your outset seeing the first 2 games, and then break down what your kind of thought process was going through game 3?
I really thought the Guardians were going to have a chance there when it got 3-2, right? Like, the Yankees with the error get out to the lead. You kind of are going, well, they got out to the lead in the last game. They stepped ahead. But then the Guardians were fighting back, and then, I want to say the doggo has said hi to the podcast. At the point of Anthony Rizzo's double, right? It was the Guardians bullpen needs to hold, and we're looking at the best bullpen in the majors this season. And from game 1 on, it was the vulnerability for Cleveland, and it's one of those things where you can build the best bullpen in the majors, you can have the best internal development, you can have the best player at the position in baseball, in Emmanuel Clase, and it doesn't matter when it comes down to postseason baseball because the postseason's going to postseason. It's just harder to get outs, and it's harder to hit the ball in the postseason. And when you get to a lineup like the Yankees, where it is the best lineup in baseball, right? You are consistently dealing with that pressure, and it overwhelmed the Guardians bullpen in game 2. But when we got to game 3, the Guardians imploded again. And that was the really surprising part was like, okay, well, they're back in Cleveland now. Surely they won't. And then they did blow the lead again. And it was the best guys that were blowing the leads, right? It was Hunter Gaddis. It was Emmanuel Clase. Like, those are their best relievers. So, Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton hitting 2 home runs, hardly surprising, but off of Emmanuel Clase, who's been so lights out, just a little bit shocking because he had the blip against the Tigers, but at this point, I mean, he's worn out, right? Like there's nothing else we can point to. They overused him. The Guardians pushed Clase too much to get here, which is a reasonable thing to do because you're not guaranteed to get this far anyway. But when you're here, you still got to have the ability, right? And last year, I'm thinking of we saw how deep the Diamondbacks bullpen was with all of those guys, and we saw the Rangers really only had 3 guys, but their starting rotation was really strong and was able to pitch really deep in a game. So every game, Eovaldi went 6, Montgomery went 6. For this whole entire series, I think 6 was the most anybody threw. Rodon was probably the one who pitched the longest in this series and in the Dodgers series. I mean, that series was bullpen games for everybody. So it's just we're in a weird state where I think starting pitching is very valuable, good bullpen pitching, very valuable, but who's gonna do it? It's just a mystery from day to day because sometimes you're seeing like Jose Quintana go out and throw 6 strong or whatever, and then sometimes it's whatever started Tanner Bybee, who was the Guardians' best pitcher, gave up 4 runs in 2 innings and he's gone, right? And he's out of the game.
Yeah.
And they're quick with the leash on the starting pitcher, and nobody's going deep into the game. And they don't even have leash to go deep into the game because the minute somebody gets on the second or third time through, these managers are pulling them out, and that's very wild to me. But that's just kind of the nature of the beast right now. Is you've got to have a fresh look, you got to have a fresh pitcher, and you've got to have a deep bullpen. And the Guardians, for as deep as their bullpen was, it just didn't show up.
Yeah, I mean that's the part of the game now that has got analytical, right?
Yeah.
The third time through the order, it's proven that most starting pitchers get rocked the third time through the order.
Right.
It's very rare that you see a starting pitcher who gets their OPS against or whatever goes down the deeper they get into the game, right? I think Jack Flaherty's does like this year. I think I remember them saying that on the broadcast there, but other than that, like I don't know of anyone specifically that does, right? That's why they do this whole bullpen committee real fast. It's hey, get a fresh look, get a different look every single time because the teams don't have time to adjust to it, And we will talk in length here in a little bit about what bullpen decide between starting pitching and what that matters, because I think they're the 2 real polar opposites in this World Series that we're going to talk about. So we'll talk about that more here when we get to the World Series preview. But let's go through the last couple games. Or go ahead.
Let me touch on it. John Kenzie Noel. I mean, we talked to Robert Murray a few months ago, and he kind of said, there really haven't been that many moments in the season. And since that point, we've had Shohei Ohtani get 50-50, right? We had this John Kenzie Noel home run. We had the Tigers almost, take it, go from 86 wins to into the DS for the chance to get into the CS. Like there've been a lot of really fun things happen this year that I think otherwise weren't the case when we talked to Robert.
Yeah.
This home run with the call by Brian Anderson was postseason baseball. Like you could pin that on number 1 on your like biggest home run highlight reel. And for the Guardians, I mean, it's another gigantic home run in their postseason lore that results in a series loss.
Yeah.
Like
unfortunately,
it's a tough outcome because to him, Noel and David Fry, who were heroes for them this year, get it done, right? When Jose Ramirez didn't come through and the rest of that lineup, which really it looked weak. Once Ramirez and Naylor were out, Kwan didn't really show up in the series. Once Ramirez and Naylor were either out or walked or whatever, the Yankees pitchers feasted every time. And like it was pretty evident that the Guardians were just missing a little on offense and they were missing a little in the rotation. And then I would think if they had that extra rotation piece, the bullpen's healthier, the bullpen's fresher, and we see a different outcome, maybe a different outcome in the series, but it was pretty clear
Yeah. I
that
mean,
they needed
it's
heroics from those bench guys.
that's what we said in our preview of the Guardians of this series. We said that, hey, the lineup behind these two isn't really great. Their starting pitching is questionable, and the bullpen is great, but it's going to have to eat a lot of innings, and eventually that's going to
Yeah,
catch up, and it did.
sure
Um,
did.
so let's talk about the final two games of the series real quick. Game four was a back and forth fest as well. The Yankees scored two in the top of the first on a Juan Soto homer. The yeah, the bottom of the first, the Guardians got one right back with a sac fly from Jose Ramirez. Top of the second, Austin Wells came right back with his own homer off of Gavin Williams. Then that was 3-1 until the bottom of the third when Josh Naylor singled off of Luis Heel, scoring Stephen Kwan. Then 3-2 game until the top of the sixth when Giancarlo Stanton homered, 3-run homer off of Cade Smith to score Soto, Judge, and himself, making it a 6-2 game at that point. Then bottom of the seventh, Jose Ramirez doubled down the right field line to score Roquillo. And then Josh Naylor doubled down the right field line to score Stephen Kwan and Jose Ramirez to make it a 6-5 game at that point. Then David Fry in the bottom of the eighth singled to score Bo Naylor. And then top of the ninth, Alex Verdugo off of Clase again reached on an error, which then allowed John Birdie to score. And then Gleyber Torres singled to center field to score Volpe and Verdugo to give them an 8-6 win in game four. And then setting the Guardians up for on the brink of elimination in Game 5 in Cleveland again. And Cleveland got the lead in the bottom of the second here on a Bo Naylor double to right field, scored his brother, Josh Naylor. They held that until the bottom of the fifth when they got another run, a Stephen Kwan single to center to score Andres Jimenez, giving them a 2-0 lead. And then top of the sixth, I think they just kind of ride Tyler Bybee a little too long, and he gave up a 2-run homer to Giancarlo Stanton to tie the game at 2. And then that went until the top of the 10th inning, once it was 2-2 at that point. And Juan Soto hit a ball that was at his face for a 3-run homer to center field to give them a 5-2 lead and effectively end the Guardian seasons and send the New York Yankees to the World Series.
Yeah, I mean the last two games, you could tell right from the recap. The Guardians had chances. They had the lead in both games. They had tie game late in both games at home in both games, and they couldn't hold it. And they couldn't get the job done on the offense. They couldn't get the job done on defense. And you hear the names that got them right. It's not Aaron Judge. I think Aaron Judge had one home run. Like he wasn't the one getting them, but it was Juan Soto. It was Giancarlo Stanton. Stanton went berserk in this series, and this is what the first time Stanton's ever been to the World Series. Pretty sure. And remember, this is a guy who won MVP. He's probably our best shot to see another 500 home run hitter. Like Stanton is a premier power hitter when he is functioning and without like healthy. And him being able to play DH this year has allowed him to be healthy in the playoffs. And this guy does not need much to get the ball out. It's one of those things where when you're watching Judge every day, it's easy to forget about Stanton. And Stanton was the original like Judge right-handed hitting Titanic just bombs type of guy with the exit velocity, and the Yankees have gone out and gotten both of those guys on their team and had them there for years now, and it's finally come to a head. And for as good as Stanton was in this series, it's so possible that Judge carries him in the World Series, right? Like it doesn't take much for these guys to hit the ball hard enough to get it out of the ballpark. And the then to go to the Juan Soto thing. I mean, we could spend 5 minutes on Juan Soto here.
Yeah.
What that was the best at bat I've seen a hitter take in, I don't know, years. Like that was he was locked in. Hunter Gaddis struck out 3 the night before. Um, untouchable, right? It's a good pitcher. Hunter Gaddis. Juan Soto took 95 at the eyes and hit it 400 feet to right
Yeah,
center.
it wasn't a bad pitch by Hunter Gaddis, right? And the thing is both of Juan Soto's homers in this series are on pitches almost in the identical spot. Like if you watch the side by side, it's the same swing, like the
Mm-hmm.
same ball location, same everything. He just has that factor to go up there and get the ball and drive it out there. And we will talk a ton about Soto this offseason because he's going to get an enormous payday. So there will be a lot of talking about Juan Soto. We can promise you
Yeah.
that. And he's not leaving New York. But on the other side, you mentioned Stanton, and I wanted to look it up because I've had this thing that he is notorious. He's a very good postseason player, so I wanted to look it up. As of right now, he has a career 170 WRC plus in the playoffs. He is slugging 677 in the playoffs, which would be his highest ever in a season. And this year in the postseason, he has a 220 WRC plus. He's hitting about 300, almost an 800 slugging in this playoffs. Here, like this is peak John Carlos Stanton. What you're seeing right now, he is a big game player. That team they're very good.
Yeah, and the Yankees. I mean, we talked about how shallow the Guardians are, and just as we get to the conclusion of the series,
Yeah.
like the Yankees lineup felt so much deeper too, right? I mean, you have Anthony Rizzo, who's a veteran of the playoffs. He's been here a ton of times, right? Gleyber Torres was really good this postseason too. He isn't like the driving force of a lineup, but he's on base all the time, right? Anthony Volpe's on base, playing really good defense at shortstop. Like this lineup feels so much more complete when you have the third hitter, right? With Stanton in there, right? And Judge, for all the postseason talk, wasn't bad, but it
Right.
it wasn't Judge carrying the torch. It was so very clearly Stanton and Soto carrying the torch for this Yankees lineup. And then you see your Verdugo got a double, right? Like everybody was contributing offensively, and it makes this Yankees team really dangerous going forward. I know we're going to talk about the Dodgers right here. And speaking of dangerous teams, they're certainly one, but this Yankees lineup is very good. They blew up a very good Cleveland bullpen. And now they've got another really good bullpen that the Dodgers are, with a better, more experienced manager at dropping in those bullpen pieces. And speaking of the managers, man, I think Aaron Boone did a fantastic job in this series. I thought he was excellent. And, he goes to Clay Holmes in game 3 and loses, right? Or game 4 and loses. But Clay Holmes was their closer for a long time this year. He throws 97 with a sinker, and you got a runner on base. Like he's going to Clay Holmes. It makes sense. And Clay Holmes gives up the homer to David Fry. I mean,
Well, and not just that, but he went to Luke Weaver in the ninth, who was his closer in the playoffs, and Luke Weaver gave up a homer to John Kenzie Noel as
right,
well.
right.
It's people will say, "Oh, look, it's an Aaron Boone masterclass, just disaster." It's like no. Sometimes good players or teams just make things happen. Just because the situation happened doesn't mean it was Aaron Boone's fault.
Mm-hmm.
There's got to be.
I mean, aside from that, I mean, he didn't have a bad move like the whole way.
No, not at all.
And shout out Stephen Vogt, right? I mean, Noel and Fry were both pinch hits. Like that's a manager's analysis of the situation, putting in those players. I feel very confident that Stephen Vogt is here to stay as a manager, and he's going to be rock solid. We'll see if the Cleveland management ever goes out there and gets him some players because to help him and Jose Ramirez and Clase. That's kind of the question at this point for them.
Yeah, I mean, for their downfalls has been usually their strength. I mean, starting pitching has been their strength for a long time, and it was just their downfall this year. So it will be interesting to see how they rebuild moving forward. Obviously Bieber's going to be a free agent. McKenzie had battled his own injuries, but you still have Bybee, you still have Gavin Williams, who looks pretty good. Like you just gotta figure it out. But we talked.
Cleveland has to live on those margins, right?
Yeah.
Like and they just didn't this year. They didn't have anybody,
and they were still the 2 seed.
Yeah,
like
and they were still a good team.
They're really good. Yeah. But we talked about over the last couple weeks about Aaron Boone and Dave Roberts managing in this postseason, and it continued in this series. So why another factor why we thought the Yankees were going to be such a hard team to beat there.
Yep.
Okay, so let's jump over to the National League side of things now. When we talked to you last, it was 1-1. The Dodgers taking game 1 9-0. The Mets had taken game 2 7-3. Game 3 was kind of a tale of two different games, per se, because early on it was actually a pitcher's duel between Luis Severino and Walker Buehler. They both looked electric. Walker Buehler struggled a lot from his coming back from his Tommy John. He induced 18 whiffs in this game, which I think was like more than the season alone he had got this year. His stuff looked crisp. Luis Severino looked like the guy that we used to see on the Yankees. He was pumping 97. He had a nasty slider and sweeper, two different ones that were throwing people off there. The first couple runs scored in the top of the second inning, which was Will Smith kind of singling back to Luis Severino, which hit off his glove and went to Francisco Lindor. They weren't able to throw out Smith at first, so allowed Max Muncy to score. And then Tommy Edman had a sac fly that allowed Teoscar Hernandez to score, gave the Dodgers a 2-run lead at that point. And then we didn't see more scoring until, what was it, the top of the sixth, I believe? Yeah, when Kike Hernandez hit a 2-run homer off of Reed Garrett to give the Dodgers a 4-0 lead. And then Shohei homered a 3-run homer that was an absolute tank, top deck, to give them a 7-0 lead. Max Muncy added on a homer in the ninth to make it 8-0. And the Dodgers went on to win that one 8-0. Just an absolute offensive performance. The first little half was a pitching duel. Late, it got ugly. But just kind of what the tale of what this series kind of is, right? We go to game 4, which was this was the Yoshinobu Yamamoto versus Jose Quintana. We expected both pitchers to kind of be strong here, and I don't think we really got the best of each pitcher. Jose Quintana went 3 1/3, gave up 5 runs, 4 walks, 2 strikeouts. Yoshinobu Yamamoto went 4 1/3, gave up 2 runs, did have 8 strikeouts there, but you look at it and it was top of the first right away. Jose Quintana gave up a homer to Shohei Ohtani. Bottom of the first, Mark Vientos came right back and got that run back with his own homer. Then top of the third, Tommy Edman doubled down the left field line to score Shohei Ohtani. Kike followed that up with a double to score Mookie. And then bottom of the third, Brandon Nimmo came back, grounded out to score Francisco Alvarez on a bang-bang play. Bases were loaded. And shout out to Brandon Nimmo because this series he was playing with basically plantar fasciitis. The dude could barely walk and was still hustling down the line, beat out infield ground balls still. So that made it a 3-2 game. Mookie Betts then doubled in the top of the fourth to score Taylor and Ohtani to make it a 5-2 game. And then in top of the sixth, Mookie then homered off of Phil Maton to make it a 7-2 game. And then top of the eighth, Tommy Edman doubled again, scoring 2 more. And Will Smith also singled to score another one to make it 10-2 at that point. And the Dodgers dominated that game to win 10-2. Then we go to game 5, which was Jack Flaherty versus David Peterson, which was the bullpen game on the brink of elimination for the Mets. And you think, hey, Jack Flaherty threw 7 shutout against this team in game 1. You feel pretty confident if you're a Dodger fan going into this. Jack Flaherty goes 3 innings, gives up 8 earned runs. There, I guess he was battling an illness, but his velocity was down almost 2 or 3 miles an hour. And the Mets were able to pull together their bullpen with David Peterson going 3 2/3, giving them a couple runs. Reed Garrett gave up a couple runs there too. But the Mets went on to win this one, 12-6. That score's a little bit misleading. The Dodgers scored a little bit late to kind of make it a closer game. But that forced the series back to Los Angeles for a game 6, which was a bullpen game for the Dodgers with Sean Manaea, who had dominated the Dodgers the first game in game 2 there. And Sean Manaea proceeds to go 2 innings with 5 earned runs given up in that point. And the Dodgers bullpen, they give up 5 runs total there. But it started off with Pete Alonso getting a single off of Michael Kopech on a 40-mile-an-hour blooper over the pitcher. and Pete Alonso beating out an infield single of all people that you never thought would happen. That immediately came right back in the bottom of the first. Tommy Edman doubled down the left field line to score Shohei and Teoscar Hernandez, which, if you would believe this, in inning 46 of the NLCS in Game 6 was the first lead change we ever had in this series. We did not have a lead change until the second inning in Game 6 of the NLCS. Or sorry, the bottom of the first. Sorry.
Yeah.
From that point on. So it was 2-1 Dodgers at that point. Went to the bottom of the third. Tommy Edman hit a 2-run homer off of Sean Manaea. Then Will Smith followed that up in that same inning with a 2-run homer off of Phil Maton. Mark Vientos got a homer off of Ryan Brazier. And basically with his breakout season and breakout postseason looking like a superstar right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then bottom of the sixth, Shohei Ohtani singled off of Ryan Stanek to score Will Smith. Top of the seventh, Francisco Alvarez had a sac fly to make it 7-4 at that point. And then Mookie Betts doubled down the right field or left field line to score one. Teoscar Hernandez, the next batter, lined out to score another one. And then Kike Hernandez singled to score another one to make it 10-4 Dodgers. And then in top of the ninth, Jeff McNeil singled off of Blake Trinan with 2 outs there to make it 10-5. But the Dodgers do close it out in 6 games at home to move on to the World Series too. So kind of rapid fired through all those games a little bit, but for good reason. We had back and forth in the other one. This one was like whoever took the lead kind of pulled away and dominated. And then game 6, we had the real quick lead change, but then LA still kind of pulled away and dominated there. So I could talk for days about the series overall, but what do you think about the series? Did it go how you expected it to go?
Yeah, somewhat, right? I don't think anybody expected the Dodgers to be quite so excellent offensively. They turned on the Jets, where we were seeing a very struggling team against the Padres, right? I mean, that's a team that needed 5. They were getting shut out early in that series. And it took kind of a Herculean effort where everybody pulled together to win the final 2 games of that series to get them into this championship series. And it was kind of like, man, the Dodgers look vulnerable. Like the Mets are on fire. It seems like and then the first 2 games went 1-1. It was like, okay, the Mets have a real chance here as they go back to New York. And it just seemed like the Dodgers had 8 runs in them every game. Didn't matter what the Mets did. Didn't matter who the Mets threw. Dodgers had 8 to 10 runs in them every game, and you can't win a series like that. You'll never do it. Just at this point, this one's a lot tougher to talk about because the Dodgers just had everybody clicking. Max Muncy had a stretch where he just was on base like 20 at bats in a row,
13 times in a row.
Yeah, like sure,
postseason record.
Yeah, okay. And then you've got like Tommy Edman, of course, and Michael Kopech. They got 2 guys from the White Sox for nothing at the trade deadline. Of course, Tommy Edman wins NLCS MVP. That is, by the way, the 3rd championship series MVP that the St. Louis Cardinals have supplied to another team in the last 4 seasons. That would be Randy, Adolis Garcia, and now Tommy Edman, which is amazing. Yeah. Love that. But also, like, wow, for a team that's really good at talent identification, it's rather shocking, I would say. Right. But I mean, we knew Tommy Edman was good, but like he'd been hurt, right? And it was, but everybody thought Tommy Edman's still like a pretty good player. Like, he's got to go for something. It was freaking Miguel Vargas. Anyway, the Dodgers have done everything right. The rich get richer in this sense. Shohei Ohtani, I think, what was the stat? Passan tweeted the stat. It's like 17 for 20 with runners on base or something like that. He's Ohtani's just 18. Crazy. Yeah, Ohtani's going berserk with runners on base right now, and there's always runners on base because this Dodgers lineup is full of Max Muncy's and Kike Hernandez's. Kike is still going crazy. He had a homer. He had a double. Like, Will Smith turned it on this series. Freddie is still playing well. Mookie is still playing well. I just this lineup, as deep as we just talked about the Yankees lineup, this Dodgers lineup when everybody is on is just crazy. Like when you have Max Muncy putting together monster performances, like 13 straight appearances by getting on base with a guy with that much power, like he's like the fourth or fifth best hitter in the lineup. I didn't even talk about Teoscar Hernandez. Like this lineup is crazy.
Who had objectively like the worst series. He was hitless until the last game.
Yeah, and you don't need a Teoscar Hernandez when the rest of the lineup is doing all of that. And Teoscar is going to be the guy against Carlos Rodon in the World Series. Like, it's just this is it's funny to me that the offenses are what won the series, and we've been talking about how kind of depressed the offense has been. The DS series, the offenses were really not going all of that crazy. The stars weren't really performing all that well. There was a little bit of slumping going on, right? Freddie Freeman was hurt. And you look through this, I mean, the Giancarlo Stanton and Juan Soto carried the Yankees. Ohtani and Freeman and Tommy Edman, which, one of these things is not like the other, but that's okay. Carried the Dodgers in this series.
He's an alien. I just
but hey, Tommy Edman is a great two-hitter. He's a good contact guy, and he was up when people were on base, and he drove them in all series long. And I mean, there's little to say from the Mets side, right? I mean, it might have been the last game Pete Alonso plays for the Mets.
Yeah, I was going to say that. It might be the last game Pete Alonso plays. Severino's a free agent. Manaea has an opt-out. Like, this team does have some question marks around what they're going to do here in the long term. Now, do they have an owner who will spend a bunch of money? Absolutely. But they also have David Stearns, who's one of the more methodical people now as well. And they will have some question marks. But I believe that they have a guy that in charge that can help them do it the right way, right? And by the right way, I mean get the right people in there, not what the Mets have prototypically done, which is pay Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander a crap ton of money, who are super old guys. And it's like, they're going to get and pay guys that are going to be good players. If you know anything about David Stearns, that's what I mean when I say do it the right way. Right.
Steve Cohen's not going to let David Stearns operate under the luxury tax or something like that. He finds that to be humorous and beneath him. But I also don't think that Stearns is going to be letting Cohen go out there and sign any 40-year-olds to huge deals, right? Yeah. So the Mets are going to operate like a big team, and that is dangerous. They might. We'll see. I mean, we'll get into that here as we get into the World Series and into the offseason for sure. Yeah. But
I was joking. But.
I have my predictions for the Mets.
So real quick, right, to wrap it up, the big part of this is Freddie still is dealing with that ankle injury. He didn't even play in games 5 and 6. There, Tommy Edman hitting cleanup. It's just insane there. I mean, you said two-hitter. He's hitting cleanup. Like,
hey, whatever works. Yeah. Like he's when I say two-hitter, the guy who gets on base in front of the poppers. But like Tommy Edman was the guy getting the job done and behind Ohtani and Muncy. Okay, whatever works, Dave. I'm deferring to Dave Roberts. He's better than this than I am.
This was a Dave Roberts series. I mean, this really was. He did a lot of good things here. He's got a lot of flack, but I think he pulled. There's this thing going around, which I wanted to hit on this too.
Let's hit on it.
There's this misconception going around because of Ken Rosenthal's little blurb during the middle of the game that the Dodgers punted game 2 and 5 to set themselves up better for the rest of the series. All right. Let's see this. The Dodgers did not go into the game saying I'm waving the white flag to punt this game in a bullpen game or whatever. Okay. He did not do that. Now, once the situation got to that point, did he say, hey, Brent Honeywell, I'm sorry, you might eat it a little bit here after Jack Flaherty had already given up 8 earned runs? Yeah. Did Honeywell also go to him and say, this is my game, don't take me out, let me eat it? Yes. But, Landon Knack, hey, he really gave up one, like the grand slam to Vientos. After that, he was fine. The rest of the game was fine. They didn't punt the game from the outset. Did they, once they are in the middle of those games, did they give themselves the best opportunity to win the rest of the series? Yes. But there needs to be this thing, because I see a lot of like people being really upset saying like, you're not giving the Mets credit. No, I think this is saying like all credit to the Mets. They had a great series. The Dodgers just put themselves in those spots to help themselves in the rest of the series. Right. It is what makes a good manager a good manager. Dave knew, hey, the odds of us coming back here in game 2 and game 5, we could do it, but the odds probably aren't in our favor. Why try and chase a win when we're down 8-0 or whatever it was, rather than set yourself up when you're going to be a 0-0 game at home?
Yeah.
Don't know that.
Yeah, I mean, that's foolish. And man, Ken Rosenthal's really been on a tear with just terrible takes. It's really quite frustrating. And I'm really glad in that case that Jeff Passan did not go to basketball, because
I don't think Ken meant it in the way that people are taking it.
Yeah.
I think he meant it as like what we're saying here, but I think people have taken they misconstrued what Ken was saying.
What?
And
people misconstruing things? Oh, I never.
Yeah.
Look, in that sense, right? That's how baseball's played.
Yeah.
You can't throw game. You would rather win 4-0. And if we were sitting here going, well, the Dodgers threw 2 games because it set them up better for the other games. Well, the Mets threw 4 games. What were they doing then?
Yeah.
You can't go from that logic. The Dodgers are trying to win 4 games in a row. That's all they need.
Did the Mets
so if you don't win one, that's okay.
Senga?
No. The Mets, like the Dodgers, there's a Brian Regan joke where they talk to, he's like, well, I love when they talk to someone after a game 1, they lose game 1 of a 7-game series. It's like, is next game a must-win game? It's like, no, we can lose that one. Right. We need to win 4 games. As long as we win 4 games, doesn't matter what happens in the other ones.
Yeah.
So,
anyways, I wanted to hit on that. So let's go ahead and start previewing the World Series here. So I'm going to kind of set up the big picture, and then you can break down and then give your prediction, and we can go back and forth from that point.
That works for me.
So we got Dodgers, Yankees, right? It's going to be the 2 powerhouse teams. They're going to say MLB scripted this and here and there. MLB did not script this World Series. Okay. Now you might say, hey, that's coming from a Dodger fan. Of course you don't think that, but let's look at some of this. The Dodgers and Yankees haven't met in the World Series in 43 years. They met 11 times in 41 years up until 1981. Yankees won 8 of those 11. The Dodgers and Yankees, last time they met was 1981. They have not met since then in the World Series. It's been 43 years, right? So if MLB was going to script something, they would script their 2 biggest teams to meet in the postseason in the World Series a lot more frequently than every 43 years or whatever at this point. Okay. These are also 2 of the highest payroll teams in the league. They should be here. They should be here. Okay. The World Series has also been on an 11-year drop of rankings, I believe. Like the viewership has been going down for 11 straight years almost.
I think it's since 2016. It's been down every year.
So that's 8 years. Yep. But if there's going to be a series that's going to get viewership back in, it should be this one.
Better be.
Right? It better be. Yeah. And we're going to hear all this stuff about oh, well, the Dodgers and Yankees just paid their way there. Well, weren't we screaming last year that good. Weren't we screaming last year that the Rangers and the Diamondbacks had low payrolls? And really the
Rangers,
Diamondbacks.
No, but yeah.
The Diamondbacks really. Yeah. But weren't we screaming that oh, they had the 24th ranked payroll in baseball. They shouldn't be here. They're an 84 win team. It's no, we want the star teams to get there because it incentivizes other teams to be star teams and pay money to free agents. Okay. My little rant on this is off. All right. All I was doing is to set this up this is the heavyweight matchup, right? Mm-hmm. This is the Dodgers and Yankees. This is the number 1 or number 2 and 3 payroll, I guess, because the Mets are technically number 1 in baseball right now still. These are 2 star-studded teams. You're going to have How many future Hall of Famers are going to be on these or are on these teams? 8. I mean,
Yeah,
really, when you
we'll
think
go
about
with
it,
that.
we'll say
I'm
8.
gonna have I would have to count them up, but
Well,
yeah,
you got what?
Freddie,
Shohei,
Shohei, Mookie,
Freddie, Shohei, Mookie, Kershaw. I mean, he's in
Kershaw,
his team, right? You got
and then
Cole, Stanton,
Cole, Stanton,
Judge,
Judd. Stanton's
Soto,
maybe, but yeah, Soto
Soto. So
probably.
you're at
Yeah,
8 right there, right? You
yeah.
have 8 potential future Hall of Famers in this series right now, and some
Hmm.
other young guys that might potentially get there. This World Series is going to be electric, and it should be electric. All right.
I gotta find the thing you sent to follow that up. So you sent us that it was a stat that you sent us earlier today. The Yankees versus the Dodgers in head-to-head games.
Yeah.
Last 18 games, 9-9. Last 16 games, 8-8. They've been 1-1 every single set of games, 20, 30, 50, 60 games. This is a titanic battle between teams that trade blows over and over again, and it is the first time in 40 years they've had a chance to figure out who's going to come out on top in this series. Like it's completely as you said. This is Mayweather versus whoever, Mike Tyson, or the boxing reference, or with the heavyweights. Like it's the two biggest names you can think of going at it, and you're gonna hear it, right? Shohei Ohtani, you're gonna hear Juan Soto, Aaron Judge, you're gonna hear all the names. You're gonna get tired of it, but it's a star-studded team because the stars got them here.
Mm-hmm.
They neither of these teams are here without the superstar players playing like superstars and dragging the team here. And we sit here and watch. From my perspective of as a fan of a team not involved in this, I'm sitting here going, boy, it sure would be nice to have some superstars. Sure would be nice for my team to be leading the major leagues in payroll, or at least playing in that division to where I'm competitive with this group. Because you look at these offenses, you look at these teams, they have whoever they want. They can get whoever they want. The Dodgers went out and got Tommy Edman and Jack Flaherty at the deadline, and lo and behold, they've been playoff heroes until Flaherty last game, but that's fine. He was sick. Like everything that these teams do operates from the aspect of we should be here every season. And the fact that this is the first time for both teams since 2020, for the first time for the Yankees since 2009, being in this spot in the World Series is a testament to how difficult it is to get here and how random the postseason is. And it's just remember, just have to be here. We were 1 inning. Well, we were like 4 innings from the Tigers playing against the Yankees to get here, right? Like all you have to do is get in and see what happens. And sometimes the best teams win and get in, and sometimes they don't. And in this case, they did. And we get to see the two best teams in baseball square off and go head to head for 7 games. I still don't have a pick. I don't know who I'm going to take. I'm gonna say
Yeah.
it's gonna go 7 games though. I we just talked about the head to head record going 1-1. The whole series is gonna go 1-1. They're gonna win.
Right.
Somebody's gonna win one. Somebody's gonna lose one. Somebody's gonna win one. Gonna go 2-1. Maybe somebody get 3-1. Then just the other team's just gonna come back and go to game 7. It doesn't matter when both these offenses are so potent. The game's not gonna be over. Doesn't matter how many runs the other team got. The game's not gonna be over.
No.
Like it's gonna be electric.
Yeah, I think it's going to be electric, and I think the best way for us to go about this, so we can kind of hit everything involved with these teams to try and better ourselves to make a decision, because you don't have a decision, I don't have a decision. Okay, I really don't know. I said pre-show I wanted to talk with you about this on the show and talk out our predictions here, because I think it's the most authentic way to do it, right? And it should give fans a good or listeners a good kind of view of what to expect from this series. Okay. So I think the first thing that we need to start with in this series is the offenses from either side are going to get theirs.
Mm-hmm.
You are not going to shut down either one of these offenses for a series. Okay. They will score. It doesn't matter. They will score. So I'm taking the offenses as almost as a wash, because you're going to score there. I think this World Series comes down to the pitching matchups here. And by pitching matchups, I mean starting pitching for the Yankees and bullpen pitching staff of the Dodgers call it, right?
Yeah.
I think it's going to line up well for the Dodgers in this aspect where they should get 2 starts from Yamamoto, 2 starts from Flaherty, 2 starts from Buehler, if need be, and they only have to cover 1 bullpen game, right? The Yankees are going to have 2 starts from Cole, 2 starts from Rodon, 2 starts from probably Luis Heel or Clark Schmidt. Then the other one will go in the other game. So I think it comes down to which one of those starters for the Yankees compared to the bullpen for the Dodgers. Because we've seen the starters for the Dodgers be able to get lit up. We've seen the bullpen from the Yankees be able to get lit up. It's going to come down to which staff of the starting pitching of the Yankees or the bullpen of the Dodgers has a better series.
Mm-hmm. So I guess my logical next step is, who are a couple of the players that I think are going to determine this outcome is a good question. My initial thought is that, as you talked about the rotations, what Walker Buehler are we going to get? Are we getting the guy that we know is a really good pitcher, throws high 90s,
18 whiffs.
destructive, 18 whiffs, like destructive breaking balls? Or are we getting the guy from the regular season who is recovering from Tommy John and is just not himself? And we're always going to be circling back to this, but Walker Buehler can make himself some money if he has 2 good World Series starts here. This is as financially incentivizing as anything he has ever done to perform well twice, because we just saw he's still got it. He's still got the stuff. But can he bring that out every time? And can he bring it out when it really matters? Because if he can, 1, he's going to help the Dodgers go to the win a World Series. But 2, he's going to earn himself a big contract from somebody to go start for them next year. So, like, Walker Buehler to me is a huge X factor in this series, because the Dodgers, like we said, the Dodgers have a couple of good starters, Yamamoto, Flaherty. They'll get theirs. They'll have good starts. Yamamoto especially, he seems like he'll give up 3, but he'll have 10 strikeouts. Like, that's kind of how he operates. It seems like he gets a high pitch count a little bit, maybe like an older, like a Jake Arrieta kind of type, where he gives up a couple of runs, but his stuff is so nasty all the time that you're always going to rock with that. So you just, okay, well, we got to score 2 runs to make sure Yamamoto's, good, but the Dodgers lineup will do that. Buehler is the one that, if you lose both of the Buehler starts, now you have to have good offensive performances in the Flaherty and the Yamamoto starts, when we've seen both of them give up runs. So for me, what do we have if we're the Dodgers? Do we have good Buehler, or do we have to cover that with Knack or Honeywell? Or, it suddenly becomes a lot more strenuous on the Dodgers if Buehler gets lit up early by this destructive Yankees lineup.
Yeah. And one thing I do want to note, because it might help your decision one way or the other, I don't know. Andrew Friedman did say after the game, the clinching game against the Mets, there is a strong possibility the Dodgers get both Alex Vesia and Brusdar Graterol back for the World Series.
So
that would basically take like Knack and Henriquez probably out of the bullpen. Probably leave Honeywell in, I would assume, and then Kasperius probably stays in too. But that way, in their bullpen games, you now have the addition of Vesia and Brusdar as well into that.
When was the last time Brusdar pitched? Vesia went out. Vesia pitched in the playoffs? He just missed the last.
Yeah,
series, right?
It was against the Padres. He went out. Brusdar, it's been a little bit, but he would be more of the lower level thing. But he has electric stuff too, so it's stuff you usually count on, and he won't be high leverage most likely. But,
who else has electric stuff is Emmanuel Clase. Electric stuff just doesn't seem to matter to this Yankees lineup.
I just don't think in a tie game in the 8th inning or a 1-run game, like Brusdar Graterol's not going to be in the game.
Right.
Yeah, so you make good points. What pitching are we going to get from the Dodgers there, right? Now, my caveat to that is, okay, well, what pitching are we getting from the Yankees bullpen? Right? Because really, they have 3 guys they kind of trust. It's Luke Weaver, it's Clay Holmes, and it's Tommy Kahnle. And then you have your lefty of Tim Hill that they kind of bring in here and there, which they're going to have to be
Mhm.
strategic in that, obviously, given with Shohei Ohtani and the rest of that there.
Mhm.
So outside of those three, are you going to get the Clay Holmes that pitches very well, or are you going to get the Clay Holmes that kind of blows things up? And how long can you trust those three guys in the postseason against a lineup like this, right? Like the Dodgers does. This is one thing that Dave Roberts did talk about in the Dodgers series against the Mets is he never allowed the pitchers to face the same part of the order a second time in the series, right? So it was the top of the order one time was Michael Kopech. The next game it was top of the order, it was Blake Trinan. The next game in the top of the order was Evan Phillips. The same people never saw the same reliever twice. In this series, Luke Weaver, Clay Holmes, and Tommy Kahnle, they're bound to see the lineup multiple times.
Mhm.
So how does that affect what you're thinking?
I hesitate. I think that's really good work by Dave Roberts. I think that's very, very smart management. It's the luxury of having such a deep bullpen.
Mhm.
But I look at what Bruce Bochy did last year, right? He basically said our starters are getting innings 1 through 6, then Sabors, Leclerc, and
Chapman.
Chapman. Was it Chapman?
Mhm.
I guess it technically was. And Chapman are getting the 7th, 8th, and 9th. And that was the recipe,
Mhm.
and it worked. And effectively, Aaron Boone can do that. He can say, Garrett Cole, you're getting innings 1 through 7, and then some combo of Luke Weaver, Clay Holmes, and Tommy Kahnle is getting 8 and 9, and then Rodon, you're getting innings 1 through 7, and then it's one of those things where even if the starter gives up 4 or 5 runs, it's as we said. I think we have to adjust our starting pitching or just our pitching expectations in general. Like 1 run isn't a bad performance in this series. I think it is in other series. In this series, giving up 1 run, good. That seems like it's a big win. Like especially for relievers, like a 9 ERA in this, that might actually be a good ERA. And if we see these guys come out and shut down, like the way the relievers performed last year when it came to the Rangers winning, they did it on the backs of guys who were wild in the regular season, who really didn't have very much experience, like Sabors and Leclerc, finding their command. Holmes and Weaver have had command. The command isn't the problem for them. It's been the location, the home runs, the balls in play, right? They're not going to be walking the Dodgers. The Dodgers have to go out and win the game on the offensive side, like the Guardians were, winning those games or at least performing well in those games on the offensive side against the bullpen. They weren't walking them in, right? Like when we saw the Cleveland bullpen walking in runs. So I guess all that to say, I think there could be an unlikely hero on the Yankees side, given the way the Rangers lineup performed. I mean, who's Josh Sabors, right? Until you get to the World Series, and all of a sudden this guy wins him the World Series. But at the same time, the formula is there. We've seen what works, right? It almost reminds me of Rangers versus Diamondbacks last year, with obviously the offenses being completely different. But the one team has the good starters and 3 relievers. The one team has a great bullpen. The Diamondbacks had a great bullpen and like one starter. It was like Zach Gallen and Jordan Montgomery. When Montgomery's on the Rangers, see, I'm already losing it.
Merrill Kelly instead of the one you're thinking.
Merrill Kelly, yeah, that's the one. So the starting rotation for one team is going to have to carry the weight. The bullpen for the other team is going to have to carry the weight. And what we saw last year was the bullpen for the Diamondbacks did not carry the weight. The Dodgers bullpen is going to have to carry the weight. But we've talked about the Dodgers rotation can take some weight off.
And the Dodgers bullpen's deep.
It's so deep.
It's a lot
It's deeper than the
3.
Diamondbacks was.
Yeah.
You see, I'm wrestling with it. We're wrestling with it because it's
we
tough.
really are. And we're not trying to play it up here. Like we legitimately aren't. We just don't know, And people, I've said it before on this. They're going to look at it as like, oh, well, you're a Dodger fan. You pick the Dodgers, of course. Or if you pick the Yankees, you're just trying to reverse jinx this. Okay. Like whenever I talk about my predictions on this show, I predict what I legitimately think is going to happen. I don't predict off of or say, hey, like I'm worried my team's going to lose, so I'm going to pick the other team. Like I legitimately pick who I think is going to win in this series. I don't do it for that. And I am so torn by this because I know how good this LA team is. But at the same time, it's just the Yankees are equally as good.
And look at it this way: if he was picking it for a reverse jinx, he would tell you. He's done it before. You've definitely picked for a reverse jinx, but you said I'm picking them, not necessarily because I think they're going to win, but because I would really like them to reverse jinx them.
Yeah,
and that's fine. I'm perfectly fine with that. We're just putting out a graphic. Who cares? But there's no bet on the line or anything. We're not making money. We're not offering gambling advice.
well,
But you are. Don't gamble at what we say, folks. Please don't. Don't do it. Look. That's another. We got to talk. We're gonna have to talk about it. FanDuel's entering the TV market. We're gonna have to talk about it. Don't worry. We will touch on gambling. But
all right. So I think what really has to happen is we have to nail it down.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's start with Matt because he's not here to defend himself. So he said Yankees in 6.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Matt said.
That's what Matt said.
He didn't give us any reasoning.
All right.
He didn't give us any backup. He just said, "I'll say Yankees in 6." So
I've got something that'll help us. All right.
Okay.
What offensive player, other than the superstars, do you want most up in this series? Besides Soto, Judge, Stanton, Betts, Freeman, Ohtani, none of those guys. What team has the next offensive player you want in the playoffs in this series? Is it Tommy Edman?
No,
see my answer.
I don't know.
I think Kike Hernandez.
Kike is a good one.
I want him more than Rizzo. I think I want him more than Volpe.
I think what you have to do is you have to set up the preference. What are you looking for in the at-bat? Because I think there's different guys for different situations.
Mm-hmm.
Do you need a guy to get on base? If you need a guy just to get on base, if you're saying, hey, you have to have someone go get on in this plate appearance that's not a superstar, take Max Muncy.
It's Max Muncy.
The way he commands the strike zone right now, he swings at everything that's in the zone and he can hit it for a homer, or he's going to not swing if it's out of the zone and get a walk, right? If the Yankees, if you're looking at that, it's probably Rizzo.
Yeah, it's Rizzo.
Right? That's he's the other one.
He just doesn't have the power right now. I think that's a function of the injury and him being in and out.
So that's where it really kind of comes down to, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm unveiling not new thoughts, but I really think the Dodgers have 3 offensive players I slot in behind the 6 superstars before I get to Rizzo. And Jazz has been non-existent in the playoffs, and I would not be shocked if Jazz has a really huge World Series and wins World Series MVP. That would not shock me.
Yeah, no, it would not.
But he's been non-existent, right? And that's why we haven't mentioned him, because he's kind of been kept afloat by the rest of the Yankees. But I'm sitting here thinking I'd probably rather have Kike than Jazz right now. I'd rather have Kike over Rizzo. I'd rather have Muncy over Rizzo. So I'm thinking Dodgers are ahead on offense in my mind right now. Again, we're splitting hairs because I already said the series is going 7.
Mm-hmm.
But Game 7 is going to come down to playoff performers.
Yeah.
And if I know anything, it's that Kike Hernandez is one of the best all-time playoff performers playing still in this group, right? And you talked about Stanton. But I'm countering Stanton with Ohtani. There's playoff performers and then there's just great players.
You're talking out of the non-superstars,
right? Kike is a playoff performer. He has made a career being great in the playoffs. I want that guy in the World Series, and he's been in the World Series before for this team, and left and come back. And the story is a perfect circle of Kike being able to come back and help lead the Dodgers to another World Series. I think I have to go Dodgers. I think I have to.
And just to add to your story a little bit, right there with Kike, which you just made me think about it right now. Um, his top two in free agency were Dodgers, Yankees,
And the Yankees need a guy like that. That
and
really
and
is the missing difference is
and he,
versatile the versatile veteran bench bat because their versatile or their veteran bats are their Stantons, their Rizzos who have to play. Kike
yeah,
doesn't have to play. He can sit out a bad matchup.
yeah.
They're missing their Ben Zobrist. The Yankees are. That's my crux, right? Because I'm thinking about like a Game 7 World Series, one that I know very well. Ben Zobrist was the guy who got the big hit in Game 7. They're missing their Ben Zobrist. And Kike is the Ben Zobrist. I'm going Dodgers.
All right. Well, I I'm still torn, but I think you opened up a good point of saying that the depth of the Dodgers lineup gives you a little bit more confidence right now.
Mhm.
And I think that's an incredibly fair statement. I think it's probably the most true statement when you start looking down the list. So I think you've talked me into taking the Dodgers, um, and I'm only going to say six because I don't want to have us both say Dodgers in seven here. Um,
I don't
I'll,
see any way. I just don't see any way this series doesn't go 7. I
look,
mean,
I can't handle another game seven, okay, in Dodger Stadium, a la 2017. I do not want another one of that scenario with the rental starting pitching option that you got going to start game 7 for you in your home ballpark and give up. Like, I'm not doing it, okay? I'm not
mm,
doing it. I'm going to say Dodgers in 6.
the awkward parallels of Jack Flaherty signing with the Cubs next February, if that happens.
Instead of, yeah, the
uh,
whole Yu Darvish situation. But I
mm,
think I think I think I'll go that. And
okay.
this series is either going to go either way. I mean, I
Well,
it's going to be a coin flip. I mean, we've
mm,
talked at length about how close it is. Um, I don't think there's really much else we can say here. Like, all the
no.
parallels are there. It should be one of the most electric series. Like, I would be severely disappointed if one team wins in 5 games or 4 games. Like, I would be super disappointed
Well,
here.
you would be disappointed if
Well,
one team
I-
won in
I'm
4 or
saying
5 games
no,
and not the other team.
I would say as a baseball fan, like, you
Yeah.
get the Dodgers Yankees World Series, like, you don't want it to go 4 games. And you want to see a drawn out series where you get the back and forth, and you get that. We got a little taste of it this year when the Dodgers went to New York. We had a little taste there. It was an electric
Mhm.
series.
Yeah.
So, just, yeah, I think that's what I got to say to wrap it up pretty much.
I feel very confident that this is going to be a good series. It is all it is all the ingredients,
Yeah.
right? You need some, for a good series, you need good pitchers, good hitters, right? The personalities. We have that in spades. I mean, we really didn't even mention the superstars in this discussion, but
Mhm.
you have some of the best personalities. And you think of to the years when Mike Trout was the best player, we have so much more than Mike Trout right now. We like Juan Soto is an incredible personality, right? It- Shohei Otani is an incredible personality. We've seen Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts on the big stage before. These are absolutely electric players to watch and electric personalities. And I want to give them my closing thoughts are we set the superstars aside because we know they're going to perform, we know they're going to get theirs, but they are what make this series so intriguing. And without them, we wouldn't have a series that's quite this intriguing.
Yeah.
And it's worth noting that the Yankees also have a Garrett Cole, right? A guy who is, like you said, a Hall of Fame bound pitcher. We barely mentioned him, right?
Mhm.
Because we were trying to delving and trying to figure out what's the little minute differences here. Garrett Cole's the best starting pitcher pitching in the series, and that gives the Yankees an edge, which is one of the biggest reasons I'm taking them in Game 7 or to take it to 7 games, because they're going to throw Garrett Cole in Game 7. Like I would almost make it a certainty, right? Carlos Rodon is going to be available on short rest. Like there will be so many opportunities for legends to be made on this series. There's opportunities for the guys that, like we said, like Garrett Cole, like Carlos Rodon, like that these guys can make an impact on this series, like Yamamoto and Buehler and Flaherty. Now the Dodgers bullpen is deeper than the Yankees. I don't know that the Dodgers will need to turn to starting pitching to relieve late in like Game 7, for example, but
Yeah.
we've seen it work, right? We've seen it work a number of times. When you get desperate late in World Series games, that's when it's time to start bringing out all your cards, laying everything down on the table, and finishing out the season with a win, because that's all that matters. And like I said, I think it's going to be as close as it possibly can. But I'm leaning Dodgers, and I'm looking forward to the series because I think it's going to be really fun.
Yeah. Okay. So, just as a full roundup here, one way to look at this is at the end of this World Series, you're going to have either Aaron Judge or Shohei Ohtani getting their first World Series ring. Giancarlo Stanton could potentially get his first World Series ring. You have, Mookie would be looking for a second with the Dodgers. Freddie would be his first with the Dodgers, his second overall. There's plenty of different parallels in that, but that's one way. Look at who could potentially win their first World Series and be happy for that, right? Now, editorial note, just looking at what the series is going to be, because we talked about the series in depth, but we didn't mention when or where or what's going to happen in the series, right? So the World Series starts this Friday, October 25th. All games are going to be 5 p.m. Eastern time, 8 p.m. or 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern time. All the games are going to start at that time. You got Friday, Saturday in Los Angeles, Sunday off day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday in New York, off day on Halloween on Thursday, and then November 1st and 2nd would be potential games 6 and 7 back in Los Angeles. So, obviously, all of those games will be on Fox. Tune in at that point. Watch that. With that being said, because there is a game next Monday, I don't know how we're going to work the show yet. We need to figure that out between all of us. So pay attention to our social media channels or whatever. We will try and update when we're going to have a video or podcast or something, or subscribe to your podcast platform or on YouTube, so you just don't miss it at that point. Because obviously we're going to be talking about this World Series, but then we're going to get into an off season where we're going to have tons of topics to talk about and all of that. So we will figure that out on the other side about when we're going to talk next to you. But be on the lookout because we're supposed to have a really good World Series here. Got anything else?
Yep. Nope. Sounds good.
All righty. Well, thank you guys for tuning in to this episode of the Batflip Podcast. And remember, for this last time, Matt sucks.
Oh man, that was fun. I started overthinking it as soon as I was like, I got the Dodgers. I was like, oh no, I don't think it. Oh no.
I through the whole conversation, I was leaning Yankees in 7.
Oh my gosh.
And then right there at the end, literally the question that you said, which batter would you rather, outside of the Stars, which batter would you one up? And then I'm like,
there's like 3 Dodgers. That's it.
Here's, so we mentioned what? It was Kike, Edmund, Muncy.
Yeah.
We didn't even mention Teoscar.
I know. He's in there too.
Will Smith. We didn't even mention Will Smith.
I know. I'm just like the Dodgers lineup is so deep.
Yeah. And really, the depth of the bullpen, I think, matters a lot, especially getting Vesia and Brusdar back. Although
I think it does, but it doesn't if the Yankees starting pitching plays like they should.
Well, here's the thing. We should have talked about this on there too, but the Yankees, we were just talking about early in the show, right? It's like starting pitchers aren't going as deep as we once thought they were. It's like, okay, well, first off, they aren't going as deep as we once thought they were. And if there's a team that works the opposing starting pitchings count, it's the Dodgers.
It's the
That's what they
Dodgers.
do. They don't swing at